Hello, fellow audio nerds. I'm Steph, and this is Major Hi-Fi. So this past week, I had the absolute pleasure of spending some quality time with the newest from Meze Audio, the Meze Rai Penta. Now, this IEM has been undergoing research and development for about 3 years now, and finally, it's here. So at $10.99, how does it sort of stand up to others in the price range, and is it really that good? Let's go back in time. I'll share with you my first impressions, and then I will meet you right back here for my overall thoughts. Alright, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to my place. So today I have with me the Meze Rai Penta, and I'm super excited to check these out. So let's see what's inside the box here. Alright, so as you'll see here, there's a few different accessories. First things first, we've got this nice zipping carrying case. It's made of leather. It feels really solid in the hand, and it feels very protective. Inside, there's a little pouch for holding on to some of the accessories, and yeah, it just kind of simply zips up, and it just feels high quality. It's got the Meze logo on front there and a little piece of metal. Next, we've got a plethora of ear tips. There are silicone tips, foam tips, and a few, 2 flange tips actually. We've got a 3.5mm to 6.53mm adapter, an airplane adapter, and a cleaning tool. Some documentation, some stickers, and then of course the earphones themselves, along with a detachable MMCX cable with a 3.5mm connector. So let's take a closer look at the Rai Penta here. So you'll see that the driver housings are really beautiful and just like classy looking. They have a very mature look to them. They've got this like matte finish, and yeah, they're made of aluminum and have an anodized finish on there, but you will see the aluminum peeking through when you look at the Meze logo on there, because it's actually an etched logo showing off the little bit of aluminum. But I love the look of these, and they're also very lightweight, so they feel very strong, very durable, very high quality IEM, but they also feel lightweight in the hand. But you will notice on the inside here, there are these 2 little vents, and that's actually part of the pressure equalization involved with the IEMs. And basically it helps control how the sound flows through the housing. And yeah, it's just kind of meant to help make the sound better and make it not uncomfortable in your ears, building up pressure. Now, there was a lot of research and development that went into the specifics of the shape of this to make it ergonomic for the actual ear, to kind of follow the contour of the ear so that it will fit well. But I am very curious to see how they fit in my ears. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's a very easy fit, and I'm getting a seal almost immediately. And yeah, it feels very secure in the ear. It's not overly tight. It's really comfortable, actually. And it touches a little bit, but it doesn't touch in a way that feels like harsh or anything. It just kind of feels very like tight and secure. And it doesn't really stick out too much. I have relatively small ears. You know that if you've been watching the channel for a little while. And yeah, these fit actually really well. Now, one thing that kind of contributed to the feeling of security were these ear hooks on the cable, and you'll notice that they kind of follow this, like, it's like a molded ear hook, so when you kind of change the position of it, it snaps back to its original position. But it is a really tight hook. You'll see that it even overlaps with the IEM itself when it's just in its natural position. So it is like a nice tight squeeze around the ear. It doesn't feel uncomfortable or anything like that at all. It just kind of feels like really secure and like it wants to like hug your ear a little bit. It's nice. Now, taking a look at this cable here, this cable is made by Meze Audio, and yeah, it connects to the earpieces via an MMCX connector, which feels really strong. Feels like a really strong connection, very durable. And then it terminates to a 3.5mm connector here. This connector is made of rhodium, so it's very strong, yet, maintains like, I don't know, it's a little bit of a feeling of weight, but just, I don't know, it feels good in the hand. And likewise, this cable feels good in the hand. It's a good length, not too long, not too short, and actually it's not too stiff or too, like, I don't know, I was going to say nimble. I feel like that's the wrong word. But basically what you'll notice here is that there are 2 wires for each channel of the IEM, and then they connect in the middle. to actually braid together. It's a Litz cable, and there are 20 strands of Litz basically per channel. So there's 4 of those wires all braided together. It's a silver coated copper, and yeah, it has a really gorgeous look to it, and one that feels really high quality again. And now, of course, before getting into the sound, I just want to quickly mention the driver situation. So it's a hybrid driver system. It's got 1 dynamic driver and then 2 dual balanced armature drivers, so it's 5 drivers in total. Now, their positioning combined with the metal sound tubes mechanism, it basically is the way that the tubes inside these IEMs are sort of positioned, is optimized for phase coherency. So what that means is that all the frequencies are gonna, according to Meze Audio, get to your ear at the same time, and thus making everything feel really in phase and being harmonically complex and full. So I am very excited to give these a listen. I've been hearing about these IEMs for a long time, so let's get into it. Alright, so for this listening test, I'm listening from Spotify and going through the FIO Q1 as a DAC amp. So yeah, let's see how these sound. Wow, yeah, I was just listening to the song Lazarus by David Bowie, and I love the low end of these. Oh my gosh, yeah, the kick drum just sounded like very deep and yet punchy. It had a really nice feeling of extension, yet had this really good feeling of separation between it and the bass guitar, and yet had this kind of cohesiveness, and together they really kind of created a great feeling of groove to the song. The kick drum was a little bit louder in the mix than usual, which kind of indicates to me a bump somewhere down there, but it sounded really, really great, had a feeling of naturalness, but also just this extra oomph that gave it a lot of power and emotional impact. Yes, this mid-range is really great too. I was just listening to the song Born of a Broken Man by Rage Against the Machine, and the bass guitar and electric guitar both sounded absolutely huge. And yet they had great separation from each other, even though they're playing a really similar rhythmic pattern. And likewise, the vocal felt very accurately placed in the mix. It wasn't hyped at all, it wasn't really sitting back too far, it just felt really, really natural and accurate to my ear. And that said, it felt super full-bodied, but also really articulate and had a lot of clarity, so it sounded great for this song. Yeah, I'm super impressed so far. Wow, and a beautiful high end as well. I was just listening to the song Quizás, Quizás, Quizás by Pink Martini, and the shaker and the guiro in the song, which are kind of the 2 like brighter instruments, really sounded accurately placed. While they had a lot of texture to them and detail in general, they felt very accurately placed in the mix. Like they weren't boosted in the mix at all. And likewise, over the entirety of the mix, there's this really nice feeling of texture and extension. And this kind of extension just over the whole mix, like with the strings, with the vocal, really provided this beautiful sense of airiness. And for the vocal, also this feeling of breathiness that didn't feel unnatural, like it just kind of, it sounded really, really beautiful, and yet maintained a reasonable level in the mix, like the boost wasn't overly done. Wow. Oh my gosh, the soundstage on this feels really great as well. I was just listening to the song Good Life by Sammy Ray, and in this song, there's the vocal in the middle and then these wide panned guitars out to the side, and those 2 things are the most close in space instruments, and they really sounded nice and intimate and present and everything with these IEMs, but they contrasted in a very specific, and like I could close my eyes and see the exact placement of the drums in space, of the horns, which feel further back in space, and I think a big part of it is that I could really hear the room mics of the drums and of the horns as well, so it really kind of positioned them very accurately to my ear. And then likewise, I think like the phase coherency thing with like the tube mechanism in here, is spot on because, yeah, just the positioning of left to right felt very exact. I could hear the kind of expansiveness of the width, contrasting really fully from the centered vocal and bass guitar, but in between those spots, the strings, the horns, the drums kind of filled in the spaces in between in a really, really beautiful way. And then as for the sense of height too, the kick drum, the bass guitar both have a great sense of extension, and I could feel it down in my chest, and that contrasted really well from the higher things, the strings, the highness of the vocal, for example, much further up in space, and then filling in all that space right there. The guitars, the organ really filled in that space. I don't know. It's just really very, very well done. It didn't feel like anything was overemphasized. It just felt very accurate and very natural to my ears. Anyway, I'm super psyched I get to listen to this for the rest of the week. So anyway, I'll meet you back at the Major Hi-Fi office with my overall thoughts. All right, here we go. Overall, the low frequencies of the Rai Penta have a great sense of energy to them. And they also have a little bit of a sense of extension. There's a bump right around the subregion at what sounded to me like 40 hertz. So as a result, the low frequencies feel very full, and yet they also have this sense of detail to them that makes it feel tight and contributes to the sense of groove. This sort of tightness and spaciousness around the low frequencies makes it great for separation. You can hear a kick drum just as well as you can hear a bass guitar, and both sound a little bit bumped in the mix level-wise, and yet you'll get this really great sense of grooviness because they can really play together. The middle frequencies of the Rai Penta feel very natural and harmonically complex, and also have a sense of realism to them. There is a little bit of a bump in the low mids right around what sounded to me like 150 hertz, and as a result, bass guitars will sound a little bit bumped in the mix, as well as cellos, the left hand of pianos and organs. So there's a little bit of extra thickness to them in that sense, but it's very emotionally impactful. There is a bump, again, at 2 kilohertz and 4 kilohertz. And what this does for vocals is it brings the vocal to life. You can really feel the full body of the vocal, the chest of it, as well as the throat and the mouth. And what this does is just make vocals very emotionally impactful. You can really hear what the singer is doing, and it comes across in a beautiful way. However, the vocal doesn't feel harsh at all. There is a little bit of a cut right around 5 kilohertz to my ear, and what this does is just takes away any harshness that would come your way from it. But the middle frequencies have this really nice sense of realism to them, and everything feels very natural. It doesn't really feel like the vocal is sitting forward or backward. It feels accurately placed in the mix. Now, the high frequencies have presence, they have texture, and there's this light, subtle, and nuanced sense of extension to it that's absolutely gorgeous to my ears. Now, there is a little bit of a boost right around 6 kilohertz, but it balances with a little cut at 7 to my ear. And what this does is just provide this sense of presence and articulation without making anything feel harsh. You can really get the snap of a drum set, for example, without sort of emphasizing that attack in an unnatural way. Additionally, there's a little bump at 8 kilohertz, and what this does is just provide this great sense of texture to cymbals that are harmonically complex, like jazzy cymbals, as well as to percussion instruments and to strings. And it just kind of gives you that texture that makes it very emotionally impactful, at least to me anyway. And then lastly, there's a little bit of a bump right at the base of the upper octave around what sounded to me like 11 kilohertz. And what this does is give this subtle sense of lift, this subtle sense of airiness to the mix as a whole. And it really impacts the way that you feel a vocal performance or a string performance. It's just absolutely beautiful, and I'm really dig the high frequencies, especially because of that kind of subtlety in the ultra highs. Now, finally, the sense of soundstage on the Rai Penta, to me, was one of my favorite parts of it. It didn't feel overly emphasized or unnatural or like you were listening to speakers, but rather it shows the mix in this very nuanced, accurate, and ultimately emotionally impactful way. It really uses the mix and shows you what the mix is doing in the soundstage. And so mixes that utilize soundstage as a tool for making emotional impact for you, it comes across in just an absolutely gorgeous way. For example, you will hear a sense of presence, this sense of intimacy from vocals. It doesn't feel unnatural or overly done so. Just kind of feels accurate. But then that really contrasts well from things further back in space. Now, I will say, because of the realism and just kind of the harmonic complexity of the mid-range, you really hear reverbs and room mics very clearly. And that really places things super accurately in space front to back. Additionally, there is a great sense of width. It doesn't feel overly extended again, but really just comes across in a very accurate way. Things that are panned far out contrast really well from things in the middle, and then you can really hear the things in between those far spaces in a very nuanced way, and you actually get extra separation from it in a sense. And finally, as for the feeling of height, it felt very similar because of the low frequency extension I told you about, as well as that really pretty subtle high frequency extension. You get this really nice tall image of the sound, and everything in between just falls into place and feels very accurate. It really makes the image of the mix feel like everything is right where it's supposed to be. Overall, the Meze Rai Penta is one of my new favorite IEMs. It has this really gorgeous feeling of detail. The sound signature feels natural and realistic, and yet it has this little extra bass bump that just, it's like my favorite sound signature, and ends up providing for me a lot of emotional impact that contributes to my listening experience. Add to that a really comfortable fit and just a good looking IEM in general, and this is a great product. If you have the money, I highly recommend checking these babies out, because yeah, they're really, really great. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see some more close-ups of the pictures that I took, as well as kind of read out more of my thoughts on the Rai Penta, you can check out the link in the description box down below. It will take you to the long-form written review that I made of these IEMs. Anyway, if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up, and for more videos like this, be sure to subscribe. Alright, I will see you next time. Bye.